Karen's voice sliced through the quiet neighborhood like a chainsaw through butter, her shrill accusations echoing off the tidy bungalows. "You're trespassing, you fake nurse, and I'm calling the cops," she bellowed, her jowls quivering with righteous fury. The target of her wrath was Emily, a soft-spoken oncology nurse who stood frozen on the cracked pavement of Karen's driveway, her medical bag clutched tightly. Emily's face, pale from exhaustion after a 12-hour shift, betrayed a flicker of disbelief. This wasn't just a misunderstanding, was a deliberate attack, and Karen was relishing every second of it. Karen, the self-appointed queen of Elmwood Lane, had a reputation that preceded her like a bad smell. At 300 pounds, with a wardrobe of garish floral muumuus and a permanent scowl, she ruled her cul-de-sac with an iron fist of petty complaints. She'd once reported a neighbor's dog for excessive tail wagging and demanded the city repaint a speed bump because it clashed with her lawn aesthetic. But this time, Karen had picked a fight with the wrong person. Emily wasn't just any nurse, she was my sister, and she was visiting our neighbor, Mrs. Clara Thompson, a 68-year-old cancer patient who relied on Emily's home visits to survive. The conflict had started innocently enough. Clara, frail and battling stage 3 breast cancer, had been receiving in-home care for months. Emily, with her gentle hands and endless patience, was a lifeline, administering meds and checking vitals in Clara's cozy living room. But Karen, whose house sat directly across from Clara's, had decided these visits were a personal affront. "No medical visits in my neighborhood," she declared, as if Clara's illness was a zoning violation. She'd posted signs, sent letters to the HOA, and now, on this muggy August evening, she'd escalated to a full-blown confrontation. Emily, still in her navy scrubs, had just parked her car when Karen stormed out, phone in hand, filming like she was auditioning for a reality show. "You're not a real nurse. You're sneaking around, probably stealing." Karen spat, her voice dripping with venom. The accusation was absurd. Emily had her badge clipped to her scrubs, and Clara's medical records were meticulously documented. But Karen didn't care about facts. She thrived on control, and Emily's presence threatened her fragile empire. I watched from Clara's porch, my blood boiling. I'd known Karen was trouble, but this was a new low. Clara, weak from chemo, peered through her window, her hands trembling. "Why is she doing this?" Clara whispered, her voice barely audible. I wanted to scream, to march over and shut Karen up myself, but Emily, ever calm, raised a hand to stop me. "Let me handle this," she said, her voice steady but her eyes blazing. Karen's tirade grew louder, drawing a small crowd. Mr. Jenkins, the retired mechanic next door, leaned on his cane, muttering about Karen's damn nonsense. Mrs. Lopez, who ran the neighborhood watch, crossed her arms, her face a mask of disgust. A teenage girl, probably Jenkins' granddaughter, filmed the scene on her phone, no doubt ready to post Karen's meltdown to X. The air was thick with tension, the kind that promised a reckoning. "You're trespassing on my property," Karen shrieked, though Emily was clearly on the public sidewalk. "I don't care about your so-called patient. This is a respectable neighborhood, not a hospital." She waved her "no trespassing" sign, a flimsy piece of cardboard duct taped to a garden stake. It was laughable, but the cruelty behind it wasn't. Clara needed these visits to live, and Karen knew itch seen Clara's oxygen tank, heard the ambulance sirens when Clara's condition worsened. This wasn't ignorance, it was malice. Emily took a deep breath, her voice cutting through Karen's noise like a scalpel. "Ma'am, I'm a licensed nurse providing care to a resident. I have every right to be here. You're interfering with a patient's medical treatment, which is illegal." Her words were calm, but carried the weight of authority. Karen faltered, but only for a moment. "Illegal? You're the criminal here," she snapped, dialing 911 with theatrical flair. "I'm reporting a trespasser." The police arrived quickly, two officers stepping out of a cruiser with weary expressions. They'd clearly dealt with Karen before. Officer Daniels, a stocky man with a no-nonsense demeanor, listened as Karen ranted, her accusations growing wilder by the second. "She's impersonating a nurse. She's probably selling drugs. Emily, unfazed, handed over her credentials and explained Clara's situation. Daniels nodded, jotting notes, while his partner, Officer Lee, asked Karen to lower her voice. The crowd grew restless. Mrs. Lopez stepped forward, her voice sharp. Karen, you've been harassing Clara for months. You complained about her oxygen tank being too loud. You're out of line. Jenkins chimed in, his gravelly voice cutting through. She's trying to save a life, you idiot. What's your excuse? Karen's face reddened, but she doubled down, insisting Clara's illness was disrupting the neighborhood's vibe. That's when I couldn't stay silent anymore. I stepped off Clara's porch, my voice shaking with anger. Karen, you're not just a bully endangering someone's life. Clara's fighting cancer, and you're out here playing dictator. You should be ashamed. The crowd murmured in agreement, and Karen's eyes darted nervously. For the first time, she looked small, her bravado crumbling under the weight of collective disdain. The officers had heard enough. Daniels turned to Karen, his tone firm. Ma'am, you're making false accusations and obstructing medical care. That's a serious issue under the Americans with Disabilities Act. Karen blinked, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. The what? She stammered. Lee added, you're also wasting police resources. We'll need to document this. What Karen didn't know was that Clara's daughter, a lawyer named Sarah, had been quietly building a case. Sarah had documented every complaint, every sign, every time Karen had harassed Clara or Emily. When Sarah arrived, her face was a storm cloud. Karen, you've crossed a line, she said, holding up a folder thick with evidence. You're discriminating against my mother's disability, and you're about to face a lawsuit. Karen's smugness evaporated. A lawsuit, she squeaked, her voice suddenly small. Sarah didn't blink. Under the ADA, interfering with medical access for a disabled person is illegal. You've been warned multiple times. Now you'll face the consequences. The crowd buzzed, and the teenage girl's camera caught every second of Karen's humiliation. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Sarah filed the lawsuit, citing Karen's harassment and violation of Clara's rights. The evidence was overwhelming. Karen's letters to the HOA, her recorded rants, even her no medical visits signs. The judge didn't take kindly to Karen's claim that Clara's illness was a nuisance. In court, Karen's arrogance melted into panic as the reality of legal fees and public shame sank in. She tried to play the victim, claiming she was protecting the neighborhood, but the judge wasn't buying it. The ruling was swift. Karen was ordered to pay damages to Clara and cover her legal fees. The HOA, fed up with her antics, fined her for violating community bylaws. Her beloved garden gnomes were removed after neighbors filed complaints about visual clutter. Karen's reign of terror was over, and Elmwood Lane breathed a collective sigh of relief. Clara, though frail, found strength in the community's support. Emily continued her visits, now greeted with smiles and waves from neighbors. The lawsuit hadn't just humbled Karen, it had united the street, reminding everyone that kindness and compassion were stronger than petty tyranny. Karen, meanwhile, kept a low profile, her once loud voice silenced by the weight of her own actions. As for me, I learned something profound. People like Karen thrive on fear and control, but they crumble when faced with truth and unity. Clara's fight wasn't just against cancer, it was against cruelty, and she won both battles. Standing on her porch one evening, watching Emily check Clara's vitals, I felt a quiet pride. We'd faced a bully and come out stronger. And Karen? She'd learned the hard way that karma doesn't discriminate. The end.